Mr. Speaker, and can I thank the Leader of the House for the forthcoming business and for tabling the motion on select committees. I think it was drawn to my attention that the Chair of the International Development Select Committee doesn't appear to be on the list, so I hope that will be rectified soon. Just to say that the opposition, Her Majesty's opposition, has been ready since July with getting the select committees up, but I know they're taking evidence next week, so thank you very much for arranging that. Mr. Speaker, we've had R&R, rest and relaxation. We've had rock and roll, although I didn't get an invite to Glastonbury, and all that's left now is restoration and renewal. So could the Leader of the House please tell us when we're likely to have the debate on restoration and renewal, because the House does need to consider the proposals as soon as possible. Mr. Speaker, look what the government has done to our children. They were expelled because they missed out on a few grades. We teach our children it's okay to fail. That's how we learn from our mistakes. And sometimes that's the spur that leads children to go on to do better things. We had the bizarre situation, Mr. Speaker, of parents having to threaten judicial review just to get their children back into education. So could we have a statement from the Secretary of State for Education clarifying that every child can have an education, because some of the head teachers don't appear to be abiding by the law? And could she also ask the Chancellor to make a statement on the fiscal rules? It seems that Modge broke Treasury pay rules for civil servants for a 6-month period from last October by increasing overtime pay rates for prison staff by £5 an hour. Whilst we'd agree with that, but I understand there are Treasury rules, so we do need a statement on whether there are fiscal rules or not. We could do with that with the NHS because our nurses need to be paid. Right. Mr. Speaker, the cherry-picking season is over. Look what they've done to our health service. Secretary of State for Health picking a fight with Professor Stephen Hawking, who rightly has told the Secretary of State to stop the slide to privatising the health service. Yeah. A person who can explain a black hole against a Secretary of State who can't even recognise a financial black hole. Yeah. The STPs are now the second reorganisation of the NHS under this government. There is a crisis in social care. £100 million will be spent on recruiting GPs from abroad. The health service needs a cash boost of £350 million. And after yesterday's defeat in the House of Lords on the government's decision to abandon the 18 weeks target time for treatment, could the Leader of the House please ensure the Secretary of State for Health comes to the House to explain this shredding of his government policy? We've had silence from the Secretary of State. Otherwise, what is the point of the Secretary of State? More pain and distress for our constituents, as highlighted in the report from the United Nations on people with disabilities. The report last week said that the UK has failed to ensure that the United Nations Convention on Disabled People's Rights is reflected in current law. So could the Leader of the House say when the government will respond to the report, as the report found a persistent employment gap and pay gap for disabled people? Mr. Speaker, the Leader of the House mentioned the Brexit bill. Look what they have done to our Brexit negotiations. What the government should have allowed the civil service to do was to use those position papers to present the facts. Otherwise, we wouldn't be in a position now of seeing how the whole thing is unravelling. And with the withdrawal bill, sections 7, 8 and 9, it says the Minister of the Crown may by regulations as the Minister considers appropriate. Never before have ministers been given these unfettered powers. So could the Leader of the House actually confirm how many statutory instruments will come before the House? Is it likely to be over 500, less than 1,000? Anyone, Mr. Speaker, on all sides of this House who believes in parliamentary democracy, the sovereignty of Parliament and the separation of powers should be against this bill. The government are playing Jenga with our economy and our rights. If that's not enough, the government want to fix the standing committees. They don't have a majority in Parliament, but they want a majority on standing committees. So can the Leader confirm that the government will not insult the British people who did not give the government a majority by ensuring the result of the election is reflected on the standing committees? Hear, hear. Mr. Speaker, I do want to touch on the people who have recently died, very eminent people. Our friend in the other place, Lord Gary Hart, he was a leading lawyer, a property lawyer, planning lawyer, before he came to the Lords. Michael Seifert, who sent his lawyers to give free legal advice to people during the miners' strike. Cardinal Cormac Murphy O'Connor, the former Archbishop of Westminster. And, of course, Heather Heyer, mowed down in Charlottesville for opposing racism and anti-Semitism. And finally, Mr. Speaker, I want to draw attention to the House of a film that's doing the rounds. It's called Dennis Skinner, Nature of the Beast. What members will find that the beast of Bolsover, like the sovereignty of Parliament, will endure.
Splendid. And the honourable gentleman is even smiling. I don't believe you. Marvellous. The Leader of the House.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker, and may I thank the Honourable Lady for that tour de force. Excuse me, and also to her honourable friend, having tried very hard to help a potential colleague of mine to unseat him. It was a great pleasure to visit Bolsover and see at first hand what an excellent job he's done over so many years, and it's a great pleasure to see him here. But there's always another election. That's the great thing about our democracy, isn't it? Always another one. Yes. So the Honourable Lady has raised quite a broad number of issues. I'll try and deal with them all in turn. The first one she mentioned, which she sort of caught me slightly unawares about, a committee that may be missing from the list of the motion that's put forward for Monday. I am checking that as we speak, but may I assure all colleagues that all of these scrutiny committees will be established on Monday at the close of business, following a decision by this House. So just to be clear about that, if there has been an omission, then that will be rectified. And she and I both played a part of the sort of farce last night, where we were running around like idiots, trying to sort out the order. So I'm very grateful to her for her help yesterday. She talks about education and wanting to hear more about inclusion. And may I just absolutely assure her that this government is determined to see a good education for every child. And there is a lot to be proud of. I mean, we say this, but there are 1.8 million more children in good and outstanding schools than there were in 2010. That is really something to be proud of. Delivering a good education to every child is vital. She talks about the fiscal rules. There are very clear Treasury fiscal rules. She will be aware that there have been some short-term support for prison officers, because there have been some difficulties with certain situations in prisons, and I'm not aware of the complete details of what she mentions, but I will certainly take that away and look into that for her and write to her on that. On the subject of Stephen Hawking, he is a very eminent, very highly regarded person, but I'm afraid I absolutely agree with the Secretary of State for Health. He is just completely wrong to be talking about privatisation of the NHS. This government is fully committed to a free health service at the point of delivery, as are all parties across the House. On the United Nations inquiry into the rights of persons with disabilities, we're frankly very disappointed that this report doesn't accurately reflect the evidence that we gave to the UN. The government is working to improve accessibility, including bettering the impact of building regulations and guidance to local authorities, strengthening accessibility requirements for transport, and working right across government services to improve the accessibility of the information that we provide for those with disability. On the EU withdrawal bill, very importantly, she talks about Henry VIII powers. I do want to assure all members that what the withdrawal bill is seeking to do is to bring into UK law the entire body of EU law. The point of doing that is to provide continuity and certainty and a smooth transition as we leave the EU. The powers that are used in order to do that, may I just give an example to the House of the Psychoactive Substances Bill of 2016, where I think we can all understand that Henry VIII powers there are used so that we can very quickly update as any new legal high is created. We can update the legislation to ensure that it's then banned to keep people safe. That's the kind of use of Henry VIII powers, is to be able to finally define the terms that are necessary. Around half of all legislation in the last Parliament contained Henry VIII powers. There is nothing new or nothing unusual about the use of those powers. And very specifically, they are, of course, always subject to scrutiny either of a committee of the whole House or by committees as a part of this House. So they are absolutely subject to scrutiny. And then finally, I'd like to join with the Honourable Lady in noting the passing of a number of eminent and high-profile people who've contributed a great deal to our communities over many years. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Well, Blackman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank my honourable friend for the update of business. I think we should also pay tribute to the passing of Edward Buchan, the former chairman of the 1922 committee, who sadly passed away, and obviously an eminent member of this House. Yes. Can I ask the Leader of the House if we could have a debate in government time? And I note that there is an opportunity for a general debate when we come back in October on housing policy. It is the single biggest issue, I think, affecting this country right now, and the need to get young people an opportunity for a home of their own is absolutely crucial, and we need a strong debate so that we get the answers from the government as to how this will be implemented in the future.
Yes, my honourable friend raises a very important point, and of course I think we all agree that being able to get a home of your own is crucial for every young person, for everyone in our society to have their own home. I'm pleased to tell him that nearly 900,000 new homes have been delivered since 2010, including nearly 333,000 affordable homes. Annual housing supply in England amounted to 189,000 additional homes between 2015 and 2016, which was an 11% increase from the previous year. But I certainly think he will know plenty of ways to bring this to a debate in the House, and I'm sure there'll be lots of colleagues who will be interested in taking part.
Wishart.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker, and can I thank the Leader of the House for announcing the business for next week. And so the honourable member for Walsall has just left the House, because I think we're looking forward to sequel after sequel, and I'm particularly looking forward to Beast, The Return, #2. So let's hope we have many more of these particular events, and can also welcome back all honourable members. So today, Mr Speaker, we have the first day of a two-day debate on the second reading of this repeal bill, as we continue to progress this clueless, delusional Brexit folly. 2 days to debate this unprecedented power grab with all the horrors of these Henry VIII powers. Now, it's almost certain that these 2 days will be very heavily subscribed, with members of Parliament having only a few minutes to put the many concerns of their constituents. But, Mr Speaker, it gets worse than that, because there's actually only 8 days, according to the programme motion, for the Committee of the Whole House. 8 days to negotiate the setting up of a new legal framework for the UK to disentangle ourselves from an institution we've been a member for decades, with all the attendant regulations, directives and treaties. Now, to put it in context, there was 41 days for the Maastricht Treaty, there was 25 days for the Lisbon Treaty, there was 39 days to enter the European Union when it was just a common market, 8 days for leaving the European Union. It is almost beyond a joke, and the Leader of the House has to come back with a sensible programme motion, with a sensible amount of time to debate the thousands and thousands of amendments that will surely be tabled by the time we come back in October. And after your rebuke, Mr Speaker, yesterday, and all the faffing around we had yesterday and supplying all the names for these select committees, you'd have thought, at least in the order paper today, we would have had the select committees up and running. Now, I appreciate there's a lot of constraints, and we've got them from Monday, but this will also mean a lot of pressure for select committees to meet next week. What is the difficulty and the problem with all this? And then we have the thorny issue of the standing committees. And the Shadow Leader of the House is absolutely right. This government has no means to expect to have a majority on the standing committees of the House. They do not command the majority. This is a House of minorities, and that parliamentary reality and arithmetic has to be reflected into the parliamentary standing committees of this House. So my last question, does the Leader of the House understand and appreciate she is in a minority in this House, and all the committees must recognise that reality?
Thank you. My constituent David Hempel suffers from myotonic dystrophy, previously qualified for a mobility allowance of £224 per month. When this was removed in December, he lost his mobility vehicle and instead was given access to work grants for taxis, which cost £560 a month. Can we therefore have a statement or a debate in government time regarding the detrimental cost to the public purse from such changes?
Well, on the face of it, from what the honourable gentleman says, that does sound like a bizarre decision, but the honourable gentleman will, of course, want to raise that directly through MP's hotline or with ministers, and I encourage him to do that.
Grady.
Can we have a debate on the Home Office shambolic visa system? Case after case throughout the summer of artists and academics being denied, especially from Africa and the Middle East, being denied entry to the United Kingdom, affecting festivals, research, tourism, business. Will a Home Office Minister come to this House and answer the concerns of some of my constituents who are trying to arrange these visas and are beginning to believe that a covert travel ban is in place?
Well, the honourable gentleman will be aware that there are millions of visitors to this country every year. The Home Office actually manages those processes extremely effectively. If he has individual concerns about individuals, he may wish to take that up with ministers, but there is no sense in which there's any travel bans operating in the United Kingdom.
Flynn.
Drug policies in Holland have delivered a prison crisis in that they don't have enough prisoners to fill their prisons. Drug policies here have created chaos in our prisons and a record number of drug deaths, including psychoactive drug deaths last year. Can we debate which country has got their policies right?
I think in the UK we've always been very clear. We do not believe that the permission to use drugs is of any benefit whatsoever, and we will continue to make every effort to reduce drug offending and to try to encourage people to get clean from drugs.
Ian Murray.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can we have a statement from the Government on when they plan to reconvene the Joint Ministerial Committee so that devolved administrations can be fully involved and consulted on the Brexit process?
There's a great deal of consultation going on, as the honourable gentleman will know, between the devolved administrations and the Westminster Government. That will continue, and there will be plenty of opportunities for further consultation in the weeks and months ahead.
Ms. Bryant.
When Tony Newton was Leader of the House in 1995 in a Conservative government, he accepted that if the government lost its majority in the House of Commons, it should not have a majority in the committees of this House considering legislation. Why on earth does this Conservative Leader of the House think that this government is any different? It has no majority in the House, it should have no majority in the committees.
The House is speaking through the usual channels about the business of the House, and there will be more discussion about that next week. Motions will be on the order paper in good time for the House to be able to consider it and discuss it.
Gavin Newlands.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. During the recess, I met with IME Scotland, an inspiring group working to tackle disability hate crime in Renfrewshire and beyond. With 62,000 hate crimes being committed against disabled people each year in the UK, can we have a debate on this most heinous of crimes?
I think it's a very important point that it's a horrible thing to see any abuse of individuals, and particularly those with disabilities. And I absolutely encourage the honourable gentleman to seek a debate, a German debate or a Westminster Hall debate on that subject.
It
was clear from the this week's statement on Grenfell that little progress is being made, especially on rehousing residents. So can we have weekly reports to the House until further notice to concentrate ministers' minds on this issue?
Well, I think that's really very unfair. I think ministers have been very focused on trying to alleviate the suffering of those victims of Grenfell. Secretary of State and the Prime Minister and others have been to this House many times to update. What they've not wanted to do is to force residents into accommodation that those residents don't wish to take. The offers have been made, and there is a total focus on ensuring we do everything we can for those people.
Alan Brown.
As a Government Minister, the Leader of the House voted to give an additional £16 billion for Pride and Renewal, and then a £34 billion tax giveaway package for the wealthiest, while maintaining the public sector cap. We should make a statement explaining why she thinks that's fair, and if the UK Government is going to follow the Scottish Government's lead and scrap the cap.
Well, to be very clear, what we have to do in any government is to have the right balance in priorities for spending, and it has to be right for the people who are working, doing the amazing work that they do in our public services, but also right for the taxpayers who have to foot the bill. When we came into office, we had the largest peacetime deficit ever, and in the years that have ensued, we have been trying to get back to living within our means. The alternative is that we leave the debts for the next generation, and that would be completely unfair. So balance in spending priorities is absolutely key.
Could the Leader of the House make a comment on including topical questions in the devolved nations questions that fall before Prime Minister's question time? We seem to be shortlisted on a number of questions week in, week out, and we can hold no one to account for it.
Leader of the House.
Well, the honourable gentleman raises an interesting point. I'm very happy to take it away and discuss it with colleagues.